The message arrived at 7:42 p.m. on a Thursday. No greeting, no lead-in, just my father's voice, clipped and measured like a business memo. Don't bother coming to the family reunion. We're cutting ties. That was it. 18 words. 18 syllables if you count the pause before he hung up. I replayed it once. Not because I doubted what I'd heard, but because some part of me expected a different reaction. Rage, maybe. A punch in the chest. Something. Instead, all I felt was stillness, as if the part of me that had been bracing for this moment had finally heard what it already knew. My name is Harper Lane. I'm the youngest of two. My father, Warren, built Lane Auto from the ground up. First a mechanic, then a franchise owner, eventually a regional chain operator. My older brother, Rhett, is the heir he always wanted. Charismatic, reckless, untouchable. And me? I was the one who kept the lights on. Quietly, efficiently, invisibly. That night I didn't call back. I didn't ask why. I didn't even forward the voicemail to my mother, Lynette, who usually stepped aside when business matters became inconvenient. I simply texted him 2 words. Understood. Then I opened my laptop, signed into the one portal I hadn't touched in months, and did the one thing none of them expected me to do. I removed my name. Not out of anger, not out of spite, out of clarity. 2 years earlier, when Lane Auto needed a $2.5 million expansion loan, the bank required a secondary applicant with impeccable credit. Rhett carried debt. Warren had leverage. I had clean numbers and a Harvard MBA. They didn't beg me to sign. They simply slid the papers across the table, assuming I would. And I did. Back then, I still believed loyalty earned belonging. Now, sitting at my kitchen table with the voicemail echoing faintly in the background, I understood something else. They hadn't cut me off. They'd only confirmed what they'd been doing for years. And this time, I was ready to finish the sentence for them. I once thought my father loved order above all else. But I learned it wasn't order. It was control. Warren Lane built Lane Auto the same way he built our house. Brick by brick, rule by rule, with no room for softness. The garage came first. The family came second, sometimes third. He had a favorite saying, one he repeated to employees and to us. We don't hire outsiders. We raise replacements. That was Rhett and me. Potential successors, at least in theory. Rhett, 3 years older, louder, bolder, lived just out of reach of responsibility. But he had the charm Warren admired, a swagger my father recognized in himself. So Rhett got the praise, the second chances, the leeway. I got the clipboard. By 12, I was logging tire shipments into QuickBooks. By 16, I was managing payroll at the 3rd location during spring break. I didn't ask. I was told. No thank yous, no questions, just the unspoken rule. I would be wherever the business needed me, available, obedient, tireless. My mother wasn't cruel. She simply vanished inside her role, hosting dinners, folding invoices, smiling through meetings, then pulling me aside to whisper, "Your father's building something for us. Be grateful, sweetheart." So I was. Or I tried to be. I studied hard, earned my MBA, turned down a corporate logistics job in Chicago because Warren said, family before ambition. Rhett focused on vision. I focused on everything else. When the time came to secure funding for a new headquarters, I negotiated the lease, compared 6 banks, landed a favorable deal with a 3-year interest lock. But the bank wanted a second signer. Rhett couldn't. His credit was wrecked. Warren wouldn't risk personal assets. So they turned to me. No speeches, no family dinner. Just papers on the table, pen uncapped. I hesitated for half a second. Then I signed, because some small part of me still believed loyalty might earn belonging. Of course, they never thanked me. They assumed it was my job. 2 years ago, I thought I was investing in our future. In reality, I was just making myself useful enough to be invisible. And if you're quiet long enough, you start mistaking invisibility for love. But it's not. It's silence disguised as peace. The first crack didn't sound like breaking. It sounded like laughter, Rhett's laughter. We were in a quarterly budget meeting, just the three of us. I'd flagged a vendor invoice, $12,000 duplicated across 3 months. Clear error. At least I thought so. That's from a friend of mine, Rhett said, brushing it off. Let it slide. He gives us good rates elsewhere. I looked to my father, expecting even a flicker of scrutiny. Warren didn't flinch. He sipped his coffee and said, "Focus on bigger things, Harper. Stop acting like an outsider." Outsider. That word didn't just sting. It rooted itself under my skin. I wasn't a recent hire. I had overseen logistics for 4 site expansions, renegotiated our fleet lease at half the cost, kept payroll afloat during 2 supply chain disruptions. But whenever I questioned something beyond spreadsheets or silent compliance, I became foreign. After that, things shifted subtly. My access to back-end systems shrank. Vendor platforms locked me out. The financial dashboard redirected me to read-only. The company credit card tied to my name expired and was never replaced. Each time I asked, I heard the same excuses. We're restructuring. Temporary system changes. Don't worry about it. Meanwhile, Rhett got a standing desk, a leadership summit trip to Vegas, an office chair that cost more than my first car. Something stirred in me. Not anger. Not yet. A quiet alertness. The kind you feel when your instincts whisper, they're building a door for you, and it only opens one way. So I began keeping copies. Internal spending reports, meeting notes, emails where Rhett copied, clients, but signed my name. At night, I organized them into a private folder on my home computer. I called it Shadow Ledger. I didn't know yet if I was building an exit strategy or an alibi. I just knew I needed to hold on to the truth while it was still mine. One evening, I reached out to Danielle Culler, a law school classmate I hadn't spoken to in years, until she helped her sister through a brutal real estate divorce. I didn't tell Danielle everything, just enough to ask one question. If a cosigner withdraws from a business loan, what happens? Her pause told me plenty. Depends, she said. If you're not a guarantor and weren't involved in recent misuse, the loan can be reevaluated without your name. Quietly, legally. I exhaled. I didn't know whether I was planning my escape or just covering myself, but I finally knew one thing. The story I thought I was living, the loyal daughter, keeping the legacy afloat, wasn't mine anymore. They weren't pushing me out. They were cashing in on my silence. Then came the Thursday morning in early spring, when the final piece fell into place. Outside my office, trees had just begun to bud. I remember that detail because new leaves made what I discovered feel even more stale. My monthly credit summary arrived, a habit I checked more out of routine than worry. But this time, one line stood out. Lane Holdings Deferred Payment Review. I hadn't seen that name in years. A shell corporation Warren once used for real estate supposedly dormant. Curious, I dug deeper. What I found wasn't surprising. It was worse. The expansion loan I'd co-signed 2 years earlier, the one funding the new headquarters, was 3 payments behind. The business was barely afloat, juggling grace periods and delayed invoices. My name was still on the loan. Still, being cited in creditor communications as a reason for leniency. My clean credit, my untouched finances, once again the reliable one. But I hadn't seen financials in months. I hadn't attended a board meeting since last fall. The last time I asked Rhett for an update, he sent me a winking emoji. No worries. Sis. Big vision coming. Vision didn't pay the bills. I pulled archived records, traced invoices back 6 quarters, compared them against budget projections I had personally written. And then I saw it. Over $40,000 in consulting fees funneled through one of Rhett's friends. Entries labeled marketing testing with no campaigns. Fleet repairs triple billed. Vendor quotes signed with my initials. Approvals I never gave. This wasn't mismanagement. It was orchestration. That same day, I met Danielle in person, in a quiet booth at her favorite courthouse cafe. I laid everything out in front of her. She turned the pages one at a time, lips pressed tightly, eyes unwavering. When she arrived at the co-signed loan agreement, she paused. "You're not listed as a guarantor," she said. I blinked. "Mean what?" "It means they used your name to secure the loan, but if you withdraw before restructuring, you won't be legally responsible." "And if I do?" Danielle placed the papers down, folded her hands together, and spoke words I have never forgotten. "You don't need to confront them. Don't warn. Don't shout. Just pull out the brick holding up their wall and let it fall." That evening, I went home and opened the folder I had renamed. It was no longer Shadow Ledger. I now called it Redemption Plan. Inside were PDFs, flagged emails, account screenshots, and a draft letter Danielle had helped me prepare weeks before, back when hesitation still held me. But I wasn't hesitating anymore. They hadn't just pushed me out. They had used me until they believed I had nothing left. And maybe they were right, but I still had one thing left to take: my name. It took only 4 minutes. That's how long the portal remained active once I logged in with the administrative credentials I had created 2 years earlier, back when I still had full access, back when I believed I was building something real. The screen flickered once, then displayed a notice. Co-applicant status active. Modification options available. I clicked remove. Then I uploaded the signed withdrawal letter, finalized 3 weeks earlier with Danielle. I entered my PIN. Submitted. No alarm. No confirmation emails. Just a quiet message at the bottom of the screen in gray text. Update received. Processing pending compliance review. It was done. The next step was risk control. I sent an email to the bank's loan manager, Keith Herr, a man I had negotiated with during the expansion phase. I attached a summary detailing financial discrepancies, vendor fraud, forged signatures, and restrictions that showed deliberate exclusion. My tone was careful, professional, precise. What I didn't include was motive. Within an hour, the bank froze the Lane Holdings operating account and initiated an internal loan review. No warning to my father, no memo to circulate. Just silence, a blinking cursor replacing the blind trust they had once enjoyed. While they scrambled, I moved. I reached out to my personal accountant, Sabrina Kim, a trusted ally from grad school. Together, we reviewed my exposure and ran simulations on worst-case scenarios. She confirmed what Danielle had already told me. No liability, no credit damage, not even a legal requirement to notify them. The trust that had moved my savings until the previous month was secure. That night, for the first time in years, I left my phone on silent, and I meant it. I slept. By morning, there were already 32 missed calls. By mid-afternoon, 78. From my mother, 13 from my father, 7 from Rhett, and 1 from a number I didn't recognize, until I played the voicemail. It was Gordon Maddox, their longtime accountant. His voice cracked, high-pitched, nearly breaking. "Harper, call me now. This is serious. The loan's collapsing. The bank pulled support. We're at risk of default. You need to fix this. Do you hear me? You have to fix this." I listened twice, not because I didn't understand, but because it sounded like justice. And justice, when it finally comes, doesn't scream. It echoes. By evening, Rhett texted, "What the hell did you do?" Then another, "You're overreacting. We could have handled this internally. but we had stopped existing a long time ago. Later that night, my mother left a voicemail. Her voice wasn't angry. It was quiet, trembling. "Sweetheart, what's happening? Your father says the bank froze everything, that they might recall the loan. Did you sign something?" I had, but I didn't explain. I called her back, let it ring, twice. I removed my name, that's all. Her breath caught. "But you can't just do that." "Actually, I can," I said. And I did. She paused. "Harper, this affects all of us." "No," I answered calmly. "You made sure it didn't." And I hung up. Not in anger, only in completion. They chose the restaurant where we once celebrated birthdays. Leona's. Brick walls, too many. Ceiling fans. The private room near the fireplace where we used to blow out candles and toast ginger ale. But this time, no balloons, no cake. Just my parents, Warren and Lynette, sitting stiffly at one end, and Rhett staring at his phone, pretending none of this mattered. There was also an empty chair waiting for me, as if they still believed I could be summoned. I arrived 15 minutes late, deliberately. I wore gray slacks and a button-down blouse, neutral, unreadable. Danielle had once told me, "Power doesn't shout. It arrives without apology." Rhett stood when I entered. "Thanks for coming." "I didn't come for you," I replied, sitting, slowly. "Let's not waste time." Warren leaned forward, his eyes locked on mine. "You've made your point, loud and clear." "No," I said, my voice calm. "The bank made my point. I only stopped protecting your lie." His jaw clenched. Lynette shifted uneasily. "We're trying to hold this together," he said. "You think you're punishing us, Harper, but you're punishing the legacy your grandfather built." I held his gaze. "Grandpa built a garage. You turned it into a dictatorship." Rhett scoffed. "Come on, we gave you everything." "You gave me a job," I said evenly, not a voice. The silence that followed was heavy, almost warm, like a room that had finally stopped pretending. Then my mother whispered, "What do you want, Harper?" That was the question. Not revenge, I'd already taken that. What I wanted was clarity. I reached into my bag, placed a sealed envelope on the table. "This is a signed affidavit confirming I have permanently withdrawn from the loan, the board, and all business operations. You will never use my name again." Warren opened his mouth, but I raised a hand. "I'm not finished. I'm also submitting an anonymous tip to the state auditor. Funds are missing, vendors unpaid, payroll inconsistent." I slid the envelope toward them. "It's your mess now, fully, legally." Rhett's face reddened. "You're destroying us out of ego." "I'm not destroying anything," I said, standing. "I'm only removing the illusion that I was ever part of it." I turned toward the door. Behind me, my father said something I never expected. "Harper, please." I paused, not with hesitation, but satisfaction. "You left me a voicemail saying we were done," I said without turning back. "I'm just agreeing, formally." And I walked out. The story reached the papers, not the major ones, just a quiet piece in a local business digest. Lane Auto faces financial turmoil amid internal disputes. I didn't leak it, but I knew who did. 2 days later, Danielle called, half serious, half amused. When people lose power, they look for someone to blame. They just didn't expect that person to already be gone. After that, the voicemails turned sharp. From my father. "You ungrateful child. We built that business for you. You're ruining your future." From Rhett. "You think you're clever, but you'll need us someday." From Gordon. "Do you even understand? You've destroyed their legacy." But the truth was, They had destroyed it long before I withdrew. When they used my name but denied me a seat at the table. When they treated me as a threat, not a daughter. When they made me invisible. Now, the loan was collapsing, the accounts frozen, the vendor contracts unraveling, and me, untouched. No legal blowback, no credit damage, my savings intact. I forwarded the final voicemail to Danielle, deleted the rest. For the first time in years, I took my phone off silent, and it stayed quiet. No crisis, no demands, no fires only I could extinguish. Moved into a modest loft in downtown Portland. Nothing extravagant, just sunlight, clean windows, space for a desk and peace. I began consulting quietly, helping women-led startups avoid the traps I had lived through. Not because I needed purpose, but because I already had it. 3 months later, an envelope arrived at my new address. No name, only the bank's logo. Inside was a single sheet. This letter confirms the commercial loan associated with Harper Lane has been formally withdrawn and restructured. No further obligation remains. No action required. No thanks. No apology. Just a line, drawn in ink. In law, in truth. I placed the letter in a folder marked complete and slid it into the back of the cabinet. That night I lit a candle by the window. The loft was quiet. The city hummed below, unaware and alive. I thought of that voicemail one last time. Don't bother coming to the reunion. We're cutting ties. They wanted silence, obedience, absence. And they got all three. What they didn't expect was that I would thrive inside that silence. That I would build something. Not out of revenge, but out of reality. I poured a glass of wine, opened a new client file, and wrote one line at the top. You're not difficult. You're just finally visible. Then I kept writing.